Alrighty, what's up, Ringside Nation? The Ring Boys are back, covering a beautiful fight night at the Apex. Tai Tuivasa losing to Marcin Tybura. Questionable no contest for you guys that we'll talk about. Kennedy and Checkwu doing Kennedy and Checkwu-like things. And boys, I gotta admit, the way our lock of the cards are going, stay tuned for when we do our March Madness, because our brackets are just gonna be sick with the way our picks are going. Nonetheless, overall agenda for you boys. Fight night. We'll talk about the rankings. We'll talk about how many injuries and how disgusting they've been in the UFC. And I'm here with my beautiful co-host. Boys, how we feeling?
Feeling good. We're not that far off UFC 300, and we can only hope to look forward to that. So,
Doc, how we feeling?
Getting the high from UFC 299. So,
oh man,
we have these events. Let's talk about it. I'm excited to talk about some stuff outside of just the fights today. So let's get into it.
Before we get into the main event, just overall to give the summation of people who are listening, this fight card did not have a fight of the night. So that should say more than anything we will. Overall performance night bonuses, I'll read off real quick. Jacqueline or Mariam, Jafel Filho, as I like to call him, Macy Chiasson, and Marcin Tybura getting a performance bonus, but not a fight of the night. So what do we think of that main event there, boys? Exactly.
I can kind of discuss it. Hey, I'll discuss it because I was the one that picked Tybura. Tai Tuivasa is a fan favorite. Tai Tuivasa almost repeated what he did to Derek Lewis during this fight. He caught Tybura with a nice elbow that made a very nasty hematoma on Tybura's face, but somehow he stayed up even though getting elbowed a few times. And then what happened is exactly why I picked Tybura, which is Tai Tuivasa has relied on his power his whole fight career and has never trained the wrestling D. So the way that you beat Tai Tuivasa is not by standing with him. You take him down and you keep him there the whole fight. And that's what happened. And realistically, if the fight didn't end in the first round, nobody would have given a 10-8, but he was getting dominated on the ground. He was getting beat to a pulp, and he had no way of defending the submission that ended up happening. I wasn't sure if it was under the neck the whole time, but he was just doing all the wrong things on the ground, and this is why he's not going to progress in the heavyweight division. The UFC is not like it was 10 years ago. You can't be a one-trick pony. I think we look at fighters like Sean O'Malley and all he can do is box. Maybe he's a one-trick pony, but that's also not true. He keeps his distance. He actually has a decent wrestling game. I've seen highlights of his jiu-jitsu. I don't think he's a black belt, but he's probably pretty close. He is a black belt? Yeah. So Tai Tuivasa hasn't worked on anything. He's worked on the crowd liking him, and I also like him as from the fans' perspective, but as a fighter, he's not it. And Tybura put on a wonderful choke, and that's it. Tai went out on his shield.
He's a brown belt. O'Malley's a brown belt. My fault. But as you can kind of see the total strike difference there, everything that Doc said is correct. I think it's maybe time for Tai Tuivasa to go and continue working on his beer and just hang out with the boys. I don't think his style works in the UFC anymore. And as I was saying before, I think we really need that kind of right in the middle division, right before heavyweight, and then we could have a super heavyweight where we could have people like this where that they're going to box the whole time and it's not going to be anything else. But I don't know. Good for Marcin. It's a big win for him at 36. He said he still thinks he can go for the belt, so why not? More power to him. And he showed he's at least a well-rounded fighter, right? He can wrestle. He was able to get a submission, and he did some striking. Obviously not as good on the feet as Tai, but I don't think there's too many people that are better than Tai on the feet. But so Marcin maybe will have the money to fix his haircut and look forward to a better fight.
While he's fixing that haircut, he better fix that cut as well. When I picked Tai, I thought he was going to just knock him out first round. Otherwise, he's losing. We all knew that going into it with our picks, right, Artie? when he caught him with that elbow, I was like, oh. But when I saw Marcin's reaction, he didn't even flinch. Like, he was perfectly fine. And I was like, this brother is crazy. Live bet him immediately. But you had one takedown, one sub attempt. That's all it took. When you get a heavyweight's back, you know, unless you're an American wrestler like Curtis Blades, who we saw in 299, still living that high. It's not a good look. And I think is Tai Tuivasa, you think, too old to get a rugby deal? Like, are we able to just chuck him in Australia and have him do something else? Because he's athletic as hell, but clearly he's past his UFC prime. So hate to see it.
Yeah, I don't think he's past his UFC prime. I don't think his style works in the UFC anymore. He's 30. I'm almost positive this man's just 30.
It might just 31. It might just be his coaching then, because like 4-loss streak. If you lose one more time, you're gone, right?
It's not his coaching. No, and look at Tony Ferguson. He's got like 20 in a row.
Yeah, look at Tony
Ferguson. Who cares?
Fan favorites get the pass.
Tony Ferguson's a company man, guys. Can't compare him. Anyways, no contest between Brian Battle, Angelusa, and all of our locks didn't really work out. Doc's should have. So, Doc, you want to take this one up first for us?
Yeah, I mean, Brian Battle looked fantastic. That was a clinic. Angelusa, super athletic guy, built like a brick. Brian Battle, lanky, but he packs a punch. Those kicks, he was like snapping those kicks. You could hear them so loud. And Brian Battle was frustrating to Angelusa. He was evading everything, coming in, getting some beautiful combos, throwing knees into the mix. I mean, that was a striking clinic. And when this fight ended in the second round due to an eye poke, that was, as soon as it happened, I was like, Angelus is gonna try to find a way out of this fight. He was demoralized from what went on for the first round. And it's crazy because before that eye poke, Angelusa headbutted Brian Battle. So it's like one fighter complained, the other didn't. And the eye poke was real. But what was funny to see at the end was as soon as the fight is stopped, that's when it seemed like Angelusa wants to fight. All of a sudden, he's the tough guy that's like, oh, I'm going to kill you. It's like, don't say that to Brian Battle, because if you run this back, your head is going to get kicked into the stratosphere. Brian Battle, really unfortunate for him. This was a performance of a lifetime. This puts him on the map. He was my lock of the card because he's like a secret that I don't think many people know about in the UFC, even though I'm pretty sure he won either like Dana White Contender Series or Ultimate Fighter or something like that. But he is just a pure striker. He's a warrior. I can't wait to see him back. I don't think they need to run this fight back. Angelusa is not on Brian Battle's level, and Brian Battle is only on the way up. I think this one also was his maybe first fight at welterweight. I think he went down in weight, maybe. Looked a lot leaner than he did in other fights. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but he looked fantastic. Can't wait to see him back out.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, and it was Ultimate Fighter that he won against Andre Petroski, where he was I think I watched that one because they always show highlights and I was interested. He was losing that pretty decisively and then had a crazy comeback, but nonetheless, like, for a guy like Michael Bisping who's missing an eye to come into the ring and say, yeah, that guy was definitely looking for a way out, is absolutely wild. And it just shows like Brian Battle was really putting on a clinic, like to the point where this guy, anything that he could do to get out of this fight and not take the L, he was going to do it. So obviously I think we're all happy to make sure that people are safe in the ring, but at some points you do have to wonder. But nonetheless, this was exciting to watch, so pretty happy with it.
Talking about safety in the ring, go ahead before I cut you off.
I was gonna say, yeah, one more point to what Doc was saying. Like you were saying that he's like a hidden gem in the welterweight division. I'm gonna say that's because the welterweight division doesn't move. These guys fight once a year. The inactivity in that division is absolutely insane. So I think it's one of those places where you're in deep waters and it's kind of hard to come up. So I think Brian Battle will still make his way up because he is a very good fighter, and I'm sure he'll get his chance, especially after last Saturday. But it's a tough division, and I really hope there's some movement at some point.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention safety on that one. Did you guys see their like altercation after? Like, I was wondering because I saw it on Twitter at first, and then I read into it a little bit, and Brian Battle said, "Yeah, it was his brother who couldn't stop talking trash." Made me think of like Tim Welch because whenever O'Malley fights, he just keeps talking, and Herb Dean has to even come in and step in. It's like, oh, that was bad. But he also mentioned like it was his brother who was talking trash. He's like, I would have whooped him too, and the way that he was fighting, I don't blame him. Probably could have taken them both in one night. You hate to see the scratch for the record. You guys think they definitely have to remake this fight? In my eyes, no. Like with the beef that they have, I wouldn't.
Why?
No, put him in the top 15.
He's gonna get smoked.
I want to see him get
It's not
smoked. I want to see him get smoked and cut from the UFC after that. I'm on my house today. I don't care.
It's just crazy how quickly he was able to see as soon as the fight was over. You know, it took him 2 minutes to be like, I can't see anything. I'm out of this fight, and all of a sudden, when you have 5 security guards in between them, all of a sudden his eyes are working. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In my medical opinion, I don't can't confirm that happens.
I think Brian Battle did that a little bit on purpose, just to show that guy could have fought, which was kind of funny in my opinion. Like, if you really kind of thought about it, it was really funny that Brian Battle was like, he did want to fight. He showed it just right now, and it was very true. So,
one thing I'll say is Brian Battle, his loss in the UFC is against Rinat Fakhretdinov, who that fight was pretty impressive on Brian Battle's end. Fakhretdinov, one of the best wrestlers, wrestling prospects in this division. Recently had that draw. Haven't seen him in the ring in a bit, but if that's your one loss in the UFC, and he's won like 5 or 6 other fights. Brian Battle, real deal, young guy on the up. Love to see him fight.
Light
you didn't see
heavyweight.
him in the ring. Oh, my bad.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say Fakhretdinov maybe not in the ring, but they were in a small octagon. Him and Rafael Fiziev playing some like Mortal Kombat or something like that. That was kind of funny to watch. Johnny Walker was there too. I don't know why Johnny Walker is in Russia doing a Mortal Kombat event. He's wild.
Canadian Checkwu doing Canadian Checkwu like this is his second loss in a row, right? You lost to was it Martin Boudet? I forget. I think it was Boudet.
I think his last fight he won, and he was like the guy that we. Did he lose his last fight too?
Dustin Jacoby.
Maybe 2 fights ago, he actually showed off. Yeah. Anyway, sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good. Split decision. Was it a split decision, really, though? When we really think about it after what just happened, what just transpired? Doc, I see you shaking your head.
No, I think that it should have been a unanimous decision. I think Ovince St. Preux clearly won 2 of those rounds, if not 3. So, fun fight to watch in that last round. But the first 2 rounds, as like I was telling you guys, minus 650 on Kennedy Njoku. It doesn't matter if he's fighting 40. If it doesn't matter if he's fighting 40-year-old OSP. He is as inconsistent as they get. I forgot I feel like last fight night we talked about another inconsistent fighter. Can't remember the name right now, but yeah, Njoku, he has the physical talents, and then come fight time, you never know what you'll see. So he should never be a minus 650, and OSP clearly had a lot of power, which is impressive for somebody his age. But Njoku was scared, and I think that's why the first 2 rounds were as boring as they were. And at the end, when he realized that hey, he's down, they made it a very exciting 3rd round. Kind of gassing out towards the end, but it makes more sense for the 40-year-old to gas out than the young rising prospect. Really not a good look for him. I don't think he's that fun to watch anymore, Njoku. So hurts his draft stock in OSP. Great to see him back in the win column.
Agreed. I enjoyed the fight. I think maybe the inconsistent fighter we were talking about maybe it was Michael Johnson. Maybe
I'll
possibly.
try to look it up. I'll look it
Okay.
up.
Njoku, like when the fight started, and you can tell that he's got just the size, reach, height, like all the advantages, and he didn't push them at all. Like I get that OSB is definitely like a scary dude. If you get close, you probably could get knocked out. And every time he would get close, Njoku would just back out of the fight, reset, and just stand there. And his coaches were yelling at him the whole time, and I can definitely see why. He had lots of good T kicks that were getting through, never stuck through with it for whatever reason. Just it was very inconsistent. So uh I think OSB had some sort of crazy record that he actually broke as well. That I think he has like the second most light heavyweight wins or something like that. So he's also been in the UFC for a very long time. Another one of those where, vets are still vets. The experience does show every once in a while, so can't always bet against them.
Jorginho is the guy that we talked about two cards ago. Super inconsistent. Reminds me of Kennedy and Joku.
That's good
Anyway,
apples to apples comparison. Like, I mean, old man strength, but I felt like we kind of obviously just went off the lines for this one because, I mean, minus 650 is crazy to me. Like, is this the second biggest line that was lost? I forget who. There was a crazier line that lost. Was it Javid
Juliana
Bashrat?
Pena.
Bashrat, right? He was 850.
Bashram was like minus 850. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Juliana Pena was minus like 1,500, and she won against Amanda Nunez.
You mean plus 1500?
Oh yeah, plus 1,500. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. Yeah. So I mean, it's a common theme when we get to the injuries. I'll touch upon this as well. But like these lines are just so different this year. It just is making things when we don't know who the fighters are. Like me personally, like when I make my picks, now I see why I got to make more underdog picks and get after it because it's just bad.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily your fault. The difference with these fights, like you could have gone through and just looked at the fighters and who they've fought and made a much better decision than whatever Vegas was doing in reality. Like obviously, like this one, yeah, OSP probably shouldn't be a young prospect on his way up who came off a loss. But there were multiple fights like this one here, Chelsea Chandler versus Jose Nunez. I was so surprised that like it was a crazy disparity, and the same thing with here, Amarim versus McKenna. McKenna's reach is like 50 inches or something like that.
Like 10 inches shorter.
Yeah, it's like who looked at this fight knowing that they're both going to grapple and was like, you know what, the shorter girl with the smallest wingspan in the UFC, her for sure. Put the house on it.
Unbelievable. Yeah, that's basically the card. It stands for itself. Did we bring up who missed weight? Did we talk about that?
We could do that now as we discuss all our picks.
Sure. So, this behind the scenes, Doc was yelling at me. He was like, "Why'd you put 7 for me? I had 8." So Doc wins the card. My bad. We had to recalculate all the. Listen. What are you, a cop? All right, I'll make mistakes. I'm only human. We had to redo all the lines here, and now everything on your screen is as accurate as it can be. I'm sorry, I'll take the blame. But Doc wins the card, 8 for 12. Me and Artie tying, going 7 for 12. I will never let Josh Kulabal live that down. Shout out my boy Christian Rodriguez for beating Rahul Rojas and proving my pick right here. And yeah, that's mainly my takeaways for this card. Missed weight fighters. Natan Levy, right?
Natan Levy, yep.
Kelsey Chandler.
The other and Silva and Danny Silva. So Artie has brought this up, so I'll probably let him take the lead here. But 2 out of 3 fighters that missed weight here got the wins. What they lose for missing weight is like 30%. So take it away.
Yeah, I think honestly, with the way it's been going as of recently, because I think now we're at like 9-3 or something like that when the fighters miss weight. Like if you're the person on the other end, unless you are very confident in the fact that you're going to beat the person in front of you, the UFC should make it a better deal for you to say, you know what, this person didn't do what I did and went through all the work to be here, to be on weight, and to be prepared for this fight. Why should I give them my time and possibly injure myself? I could be out for much longer. Schedule me within like the next 4 weeks, like whatever. Like, I don't understand why like people keep getting away with it, and it's I don't know. It's not great. I think there needs to be, and maybe like we said before, maybe UFC 300 will be the turning point for the UFC. Maybe we'll see something different. Just I'm hoping something does change because it doesn't make sense that we keep getting fighters who miss weight that come in there and obviously have an advantage because they didn't push hard enough and lose the last couple of pounds. So on to you guys.
Doc, go right ahead.
Yeah, so it's so frustrating that it seems to be just commonplace now for these fighters to miss weight. And Israel Adesanya a few years back mentioned like in it after winning a fight, he's like, "Hey, we need to start finding these guys 70%, 80%." You know, we've been talking about how the not big names in the UFC, um, they're not making crazy amounts of money, and you know, a lot of their money goes towards their coaching and the nutrition and bringing out the entire team and all of that, bring money back to the gym. Um, Imagine like if you get fined 70%, and you know you're off by a pound and a half, like I bet if you knew that, you like wouldn't eat your Big Mac, you know, like a month beforehand. You'll do whatever you have to make sure that you make weight. And if you're not going to make weight, you're going to let your opponent know like, "Hey, like it's not going to happen here, like let's try to move it or pick a different weight class." Because it's absolutely ridiculous. They don't get enough punishment for missing the weight, and that's why it's happening so often. I can't imagine this happening in boxing. Um, like I don't follow boxing as closely as it, but the stuff that I do watch, no big fights have weight misses. And sometimes they do like a catch weight fight. Maybe we need that in the UFC. But people should be penalized for not following the rules. And I think all the UFC has done is made it so that water cutting is more structured, where you can only lose X percent of your weight in a certain amount of time. Maybe that's why more fighters are missing weight. Regardless, I'm very pro instituting bigger punishments for weight misses, because if you're going to win 75% of the fights that you miss weight on, like it has been going this year, nine out of 12 or whatever, there's no reason to accept the fight from the other side. It's not about not having a love for fighting for the person that made weight. So
Yeah. To your point with the water weight cut, there needs to be a hydration check like the one championship does. I think that's a very good idea. I think that will also probably bring more thought to the UFC of changing up the weight classes a little bit. I think maybe Alex and I, at some point, I think I told them like, how cool would it be if instead of 125, we had 130 for men's, we had a 138, then 145, and then we can add that 165 division, so we could have guys who are either kind of small for 170 and some guys who are a little too big for 155 that will just never miss weight again because they'll have that on their own division. And like I said before, when we started this talk, like how cool would it be if we had a 215 to 230, like just whatever. They definitely can do it. I think they just don't want to split up the divisions as much, but some of those divisions are so stacked with so much talent that I don't think it would even really hurt them all that much. But just a thought.
I mean, behind the scenes, you said you would, if you had a ponytail, like I forget who it was, that missed weight, you would shave it off. You would cut an arm. You're here to feed your family. Like, if it's not the money, like I was just looking here on the side. So before I get called casual again, the thing that caught my eye on missing weight, especially this year so far, it's mostly the underdogs. If you really think about it, like I definitely don't think that they're doing it for an advantage and to get back into it. But if they know that, hey, not having a good camp, probably not going to win this fight. I don't care about the money. Let me just not worry about the weight cut and take my focus off that and just work the hands and try to go and get the win for the record to get a better fight in the next one. If you're doing that, great. But there has to be more of a punishment. Like Doc mentioned, the Israel Adesanya, we have to take a higher percentage. Like boxing gets 10%, 10, 20%. I understand there might be more money in boxing. Sure, make that argument as much as you want. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of things they can do here, and to just continue on with everything that's going on and not, one, make a statement about it, or two, make anything of a difference maker is criminal to the entire organization. That's my piece.
It delegitimizes the UFC, and with
100%.
all like these, like this year, these past few years, with more focused on betting in the UFC, we've talked about it a lot. These judges are putting out ridiculous cards. If fighters are now also missing weight, you're just making it harder to continue being a fan of the sport, regardless of how fantastic these fighters have become.
Yeah, and that person with the ponytail was CJ Vergara. He came out, long hair.
Oh yeah,
could have cut it
long
off. Like
hair. Don't care.
Yeah, I think we were watching the weigh-in or something, and I just messaged you, and I was like, dude, I would have cut my foot off if it meant I have to feed my family.
But
Like,
foot off is kind of crazy. Ponytail I can get. Like,
you gotta make weight. Like, and like you guys said, these guys are making nothing because they're so far down in the UFC. When you come in and you get 30% of your purse taken to begin with, like, they have nothing. So
Yeah.
if that punishment does go higher, I don't think anybody's gonna be missing weight again. So
yeah, it's difficult.
We'll see.
It's difficult, but nonetheless, that's your card. I'm sick and tired of it. Get better Apex cards, Dana. That's all I'm saying. I know you're not listening, but hopefully that message finds you in the nicest shape and form. Onto the rankings. It's not Tuesday. Again, we're busy. We're scheduled. What are you, a cop? Again, these are the rankings that we have again. Yeah, we'll go over all these real quick. I see Sean O'Malley went up 2. That's the first thing I wanted to say. Like, have we discussed this behind the scenes or on the pod? I can't remember. Please remind me that all these rankings are all made by, probably a platformer committee through the UFC and whatever sanction. But I found out, aren't the pound for pound ranks like fan based? Like there's a big fan interaction on these. So it's like, why do we even have this as if we're not going to have like a deviation on, okay, that's great that the fans have a say and this is great and you spark an argument out of it. But what are you guys doing behind the scenes to actually make the legitimate one? And just because you're a champ doesn't mean you should be higher than someone else, in my opinion. But nonetheless,
yeah, I don't know. I for some reason I'm surprised that Sean isn't higher than Ilya Taporia on these rankings, especially with 2 title defenses now, right? Or just at least 1 title defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise, not a ton of movement through too many divisions. And I know you said it's not Tuesday, but I don't think there's going to be too much movement based on the card that we just had anyway.
Should be.
Marcin Chibudia should be going up, I think, at least like 1, maybe just 2. Who knows? Not a ton of movement there. Nothing for the light heavyweight division. Anthony Hernandez up 1 middleweight. And a ton of movement in welterweight. And I wanted to hear you guys talk about this because obviously we watched JDM Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns was at 4. JDM was at 10. And for whatever reason, JDM didn't get his spot. And Colby Covington is now in 4 after 2 consecutive losses. He's like 1-3 in his last 4 or something like that. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Doesn't make sense for Covington to be up there. He should have been moved down a while ago. Has had terrible performances. His most recent performance was absolutely atrocious. So I get it. His last fight was against Leon, right? But it looked terrible. So he is still riding his high from 3 years ago when he won his last fight. And he fights once a year. He should be demoted. I will say it hurts seeing Kevin Holland under Michael Page, but it makes sense. It makes sense. And good to see Michael Venom Page moving up rankings. No more Undertaker walkouts, but he is a good fighter. So that's nice to see. But yeah, Colby Covington should not be ranked 4. That's the main takeaway. And I'll just say one more thing. Notable person missing from the pound for pound rankings, Mirab Dvalishvili. That is criminal.
True. Very true.
And Bilal, but Artie knows I'm going to say that, so I'll just say it straight up. Colby Covington shouldn't be ranked, period, after everything that he's put me through. But it is what it is. That's a personal vendetta. I know there's a lot of action. 2 things that caught my eye instantly. Actually, 3 things. Shout out Neil Magny for not moving, maintaining that gateway. You got to go through me to get up the rankings. That they're definitely just putting him in there for. Sean Brady only down 1, even after canceling a fight and getting hurt. So I'm wondering how bad he slides if he doesn't fight soon. Hopefully he's fine. And then the last thing I'll say, Jack Della, I understand he beat Gilbert Burns. I'm not knocking what he did. Gilbert Burns, to me, was winning that entire fight the whole time. I get that this is the UFC and you got to make motion, you got to make fights, you got to promote all these things. Gilbert Burns not being a top 5 guy, especially after that performance, doesn't sit right with me. Especially because Colby's ahead of him. But even if Colby wasn't, like, he should still be the top 5, like, even with that performance. But that's just my 2 cents. Surprisingly, I'm going to say it every time. This is my meme of the podcast. It's not an episode if I don't say Khamzat Chimaev at least once. I didn't know he was 11th. I thought he was a little lower than that. I thought he was going to just be like 14, 15. Like, they're just barely keeping him on the edge because he's not fighting. But I mean,
well, at least they took him off the welterweight because they know that he can't make welterweight.
Yeah, that was bad, but it is what it is, huh? Apart from the rankings, obviously, and apart from people missing weight, the other aspect about people's bodies that we hate to see are injuries. I feel like,
done with this.
Oh, all right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mateus Gamrot, Chandler went down 1, obviously inactive. And then Benoit Saint-Denis also went up 1 after you said that he had a terrible loss and it looked bad for him. He actually went up a ranking, so joke's on you.
I meant bad loss for his title run because he was riding a big KO train. And now that you didn't KO someone, it's hard to go up the rankings. That's what I meant. I'll stay on that hill. But yeah,
he still went up the rankings.
I mean, he should be higher than RDA. But one thing, I know this is in the future, I'm excited to see whatever happens with Jalen Turner and Renato Moicano. I wonder how they're going to shift the rankings with all these fighters above Jalen Turner if he does end up winning. I wonder where he slots in, because unless it's something crazy, like, I'm going to disagree wherever they put him. But that's just another personal vendetta, I guess.
One other thought for the rankings as well. How would you guys feel if there was like a seasonal reset once a year where if you haven't fought in a year, you just slide right off? Obviously, given that there is not like actually a serious injury where, you know, you are unable to fight for sure. Like somebody like, you know, I don't know, like let's just pick
Rafael Fiziev.
Sure, yeah. Or well, no, he was injured, right? That his
Exactly, yeah. So he can't move.
Yeah. Michael Chandler, who hasn't fought in forever. Like, why is he number 6? There's so many guys in the lightweight division. Why is he
you've mentioned this before, and I'm down as long as they can sell me the battle pass with it, so I can actually watch pay-per-views and not have to pay for them as much as they are. But all jokes aside, Doc and I think you and I had a conversation about this. I forget which fighter it was actually, but I'm glad you brought up Fiziev because that was the point I was going to make. If it's an injury and you genuinely are doing your best and you are going to the PI, telling the UFC, still doing all these drug tests at whatever crazy hours of the day, and you're being a company man like my boy RDA, you shouldn't slide that much. You know what I mean? And especially if you're healthy and not fighting and just asking for title fights like Khamzat Chimaev, then you should definitely start to dip off. And you should start to dip off in a very punishable way. Because unless you punish the fighter for just, you know, taking fights that they're going to win to climb the rankings, that's one thing. But if we call and we say, hey, we got a guy for you, and you say no, all right, have fun going down 2 spots. Like, you should only, it shouldn't be a strike 3 system, but it should be like, you do X amount of denies, you go down, or you don't fight for X amount of months, you go down instantly. But this is the fight business. You gotta adapt. So I'll let Doc go ahead.
I don't really have much else to add.
Perfect.
I'm just smiling. I'm just smiling looking at how stacked the lightweight division is.
It was pretty crazy. But on to what you were saying, Alex. We'll just move it over to Piotr Jan. Put out a tweet, says he had a MRI confirmed that he had an ACL rupture, a meniscus tear, and a groin injury. So he still won the fight with that as well. And Doc, I'll let you take it away because you wanted to talk about this. So on to you.
Yeah, this came out, and I've been meaning to talk about just in general. I feel like this year injuries are way more prominent than they have been in the past, and I'm not exactly sure why. But Piotr Jan here getting injured, Jack Della Maddalena showing us his broken arm that he beat Gilbert Burns with. Other things that come to mind, Danny Barlow. I don't know if you guys remember that early prelim, nicknamed Left Hand to God. He broke his fist and then used that punch to knock out the other guy. So many fighters go on the mic after the fight and be like, yeah, this is broken. And it's not like a cop out. It's real. it's fighters that are winning. And it's hard to know why this is happening. First thing that comes to mind, and I'm not saying that this is why, but with the USADA change, unclear if people are using some better stuff here. I think part of it is that technique is getting better. I think part of it is people are cutting a lot of weight to get every little advantage that they can, depleting their body, and that is hurting their limbs as well. But it's really sad to see because some of these are the best. Like Piotr Jan just put on a phenomenal performance, and we can't wait to see him back out there. But he has to take this extended layoff for this really significant injury. He's not getting any younger, and it really makes it hard for the best fights to be made. We've had the heavyweight division with all of the injuries. John Jones. We have Jamal Hill with his injury. We have Alexander Rakic was out for a long time during his prime, and it really sucks. But I feel like this year it has just been happening more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And how sick would it be for UFC to get a milk sponsor right now? Calcium, good for the bones, right?
Fairlife
power.
The Fairlife Arena.
I don't have too many thoughts on this. I mean, it is kind of crazy how often this has been happening, and like you said, it's not that they're out there just going absolutely crazy and doing crazy stuff and then it's just breaking. These are just regular looking fights, and then you'll get somebody like, I broke my whole arm, and it's like, all right, well, okay.
And then you'll have Molly McCann rip out someone's arm at the elbow.
You just made me remember that terrible image. I'm
gonna go throw up real quick. My overall 2 thoughts are, one, I'll pose the question of, do you actually think this helps Piotr Jan in the long run with all the action that we're going to see at the top of this division? I think it does. So. I think him not fighting for the rest of the year, although it sucks from a fan perspective, but I think it'll be better in his favor to see where it shakes out and take a smarter fight to let him recover and do what he will. So I think that's.
I think he'd be waiting for a while anyway. I think Merab and Sean isn't until late summer, early fall. And then he's definitely going to be out at least 10 months, because that's a lot of surgery. That's 2 tendons, and then he said his groin, whatever. That's pretty wild. So he'll be out for a little while.
I was going to say, I feel like, one, it helps him obviously let all the fights play out, for one, to get what he wants, and 2, if O'Malley retains, he's getting more 5-round fight films on him. He's being able to study him more and seeing what he's doing to maintain the title, because we talked about title defenses before. But I feel, and I think we all share the same opinion, that Dr. Marab or Mexican Marab's going to probably be the champ most likely, and he's already fought him before. So he's got to see, what Marab's been doing and how Marab acts in 5-round fights. I know he fought Henry in another injury. Didn't Henry Cejudo have like brain damage or something that he said like from that fight? So it's interesting to see. This is a really interesting injury just for the division as a whole, not just for Peter Yan. I will say the last thing, I know I said whatever about BSD and his antibiotics, but you guys are absolutely right. You show up to the ring, you better be ready to go. He didn't do that bad. Still think it hurts his resume. I'll stay on that. Also, like this one is more refereeing, but I felt like it started just beginning of the podcast for us. Like, if you think back to Jalen Turner and Bobby Green, like Bobby Green is on medical suspension. Now he's fighting at 300. And didn't Beneil Dariush get hurt after the Armand fight? I think Dariush had a 6-month suspension or something. So, I mean, I don't know. We could be USADA. It could be one of the things. I'd like to stop seeing it personally. I don't want to hear about the broken hands. It's one thing if a fighter loses and says, yeah, I broke something. It wasn't me. Pixar, it didn't happen, bro. But when you win the fight and then you do it, that's a dog move right there. So
I can tell you mentioning Bobby Green, man, Bobby Green's face almost broke Jalen Turner's hand. Like
turn away.
that was almost ref induced hand injury.
That was bad. It was Herb Dean. No, it wasn't Herb Dean. Who's the ref that did that?
No, it was Chris Taioni. Of course it
was. Your favorite power slap official.
Maybe it's time for those gloves that who makes them? I think it's Gaethje's gym makes special gloves that are so like the UFC glove is straight like this. That's why we get so many eye pokes and stuff when they hand fight. Whereas the gloves that they make your hand rounded so it's easier to be like a fist. Maybe it's time for those gloves because they look way cooler too. So it's what everybody uses. I'm pretty sure to train anyway. So weird.
I wonder how that would affect wrestlers though. Like, how would someone who's not known for their striking like that? Like, would it really play that much into effect, or would it?
Just grow up.
Just stand up. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu isn't real. You heard Derek Lewis before. Nonetheless, listen, dropped the ball, was busy, St. Patty's with the boys. Grow up. What are you, a cop? Didn't tweet out the pics. My bad. All right. Not going to miss it this time. We got another card coming up. I'm sick and tired of these Apex cards, so hopefully they don't disappoint. Next one being, I already forgot. Someone remind me. Is it Rose card? Yeah, Rose Namajunas. Rose Namajunas fighting for not her career, but for her fan base back at this point. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of hate for her on the MMA community. I'm definitely picking her next weekend just because I want to see her win, but I don't know. I wouldn't bet on her, but that's just personal.
Next week's card has Edmund Shahbazian, pride of the Armenian people. If he loses, I think that career is over. So we'll see. Once highly touted prospect that could have become one of the youngest champions in the UFC that got stopped in his tracks, got caught up with the fame, and is very close to being on his way out.
Agreed. Yeah, the fight that caught my eye was Talbot Cameron Simon, whatever, however you say it. I've heard it used differently so many times. That's going to be the one I'm keeping my eye on. But until next weekend, we'll cover that one.
Another Tafa.
Yeah, is he still fighting?
Yeah,
it's a switch up. It's they switched it up. They ran it back. They Uno reversed.
Didn't he just like tear his ACL behind the scenes? Isn't that what he did? Or was it just like,
bro, he's boxing. Who cares?
Oh my God. The house on Carl Williams. Yeah, nipples. They said it was a knee injury, I thought, no?
He's no longer an adventurer, but he can still fight.
All right. He's been playing Skyrim with Robert Whittaker clearing because he's ready to go. He's been ready to go. Nonetheless, as Artie always says, comment, like, subscribe. We know you guys are watching. Just give us some energy. Give us something to go off of. We do this for you, by the common man, for the common man. And anything else before we sign off here, boys?
I guess super quick thing. Marvin Vittori is out. That'll be kind of interesting for that fight card. kind of derails it, in my opinion, a little bit, but whatever. Still excited for the rest of these. UFC 300 won't be around, but maybe, halfway around the world, I'll still be watching, and I'll ride that high until that Saudi Arabia card, which is so far away, but
Yeah, we'll see. We have a lot of promising events this year, so hopefully they don't disappoint, because these Apex cards are not it. Not it at all. But nonetheless, Doc, give us your final words.
Not too much to say. Glad I got the victory for this card. I know it's
I
been
knew
a
it.
while. My picks have been pretty bad lately, but hey.
We're gonna have to do that like spotlight for like when you win a card. Like I forget is it first take or whatever? Not first take. The show when they win
part of the
page,
interruption.
Part of the interruption.
Around the horn. Around the horn.
Around the horn. Around the horn. Yeah, yeah. You're gonna be the Woody Page of the Ring Boys. I'm gonna need quotes behind you for every podcast now. All right, boys. It's been real. Ringside Nation. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.